Hey guys, Don here. Welcome to Podiatry Practice Mastery. I'm calling this new series the $1 Million New Practitioner Series. This is a series of articles that I wanted to write. So my goal is to, with these, write 1,000-word articles that can be then published, and then maybe even afterwards, if put them into like a book or PDF fashion for new practitioners. So the goal with this is how to get to a new practitioner to the $1 million mark. And this first one I want to talk about is how to increase productivity. So this is a series to help new practitioners produce $1 million in personal production in the office. This can be a daunting task, but it is possible. The first aspect that needs to be addressed is, why do you want to focus on production? Today, many podiatrists that are finishing residency are opting to be employed versus being owners. And usually if you're an employee, you're less worried about your production than you are if you're an owner. However, the higher your production, most likely the more valuable you are to your company. And most of the time, our salary is directly tied to how much you're earning or how much you're producing for your practice. So the more you're going to earn in your bonus structure, that's usually how it works. So for example, in our office, we do straight 30%. So whatever the doctor produces, they're going to get 30%. So if they produce 600,000, they're going to get 180,000, right? If they produce 800,000, they're going to get 240, and if they get to $1 million, they're going to get 300,000. So the more you can produce, the more your revenue would be. So as an associate, that's an attractive offer. There's different methods of changing it or scaling it, but I find that the 30 to 35% structure, depending on your overhead, tends to be the easiest thing for doctors coming out. So the first aspect we need to determine is, how do you go about getting to $1 million in production? It might be daunting. The first thing you need to know is how much you're producing currently, how much you're producing each month, and I like to kind of make this simple for everyone. And I've talked about this before, but how do you get to $1 million in production? Well, you divide it up. So let's say there are 50 weeks in a year, and you're working, so you're going to take 2 weeks off. Maybe you're going to have more weeks off, that's fine. You can just do the math, but this is going to keep it simple. So you have 50 weeks in a year, and you'd like to produce $1 million, so you need to produce $20,000 per week. Okay, real simple. $20,000 per week times 50 is $1 million. And so say you work 5 days a week, right? That would make sense. Then you would need to produce $4,000 a day. Okay? And if you see about 20 patients a day, keeping it simple, you would have to produce about $200 per patient. Okay? That's why it's important to try to do things that produce more revenue and do less things that produce less revenue. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Producing things that produce more revenue would be a lot of self-pay options, Shockwave, doing Swift, doing small surgical procedures. All those things can produce more than that 200 mark. And it's obvious that this 200 mark is a kind of a baseline or equivalent of all the procedures that you're doing, or all the treatments, all the patients that you're seeing, right? The median is $200. So there's going to be some you're going to produce $600 or $800. There's others you're going to produce less than that. The easiest way is to do more patients that produce more and less patients that produce less. Okay, so in terms of nail care, we found that it works best to double book nail care and using an assistant to help with that, and only doing it a half day a week. So that's why you're reducing the number of low visit patients you're doing, and you're kind of merging them together to do a lot more volume of them to make it more profitable. Okay, and a lot of these other, and then different add-on things as well we've talked about. So ways, if you could do x-rays on patients, that'll increase the revenue. If you're doing an ultrasound on patient, it'll increase the revenue. If you're going to have them, if you sell certain things in the office and you do in-office dispensing, that's going to increase the amount of revenue for these patients. So the first challenge for new practitioners, in my opinion, is the quantity of patients that you're seeing, because it's a lot harder if you have, let's say, only 10 patients a day to get to that $1 million mark, because you just can't produce enough with each patient. So you need the volume first. And ideally, if you can do a volume of high high revenue producing patients. You want to increase your per visit value, but you can't just increase per visit if you don't have any patients to see. So there's an easy equation that I've learned from a couple of my business people that I follow. One guy is Alex Hormozi, and the other one, there's another, it'll come to me in a little bit who this other guy is. But they talk about there's only 3 ways, and so if you think about your podiatry practice, there's only 3 ways that you can increase revenue. One is to increase the number of patients, right, until you hit that cap of whatever 20 to 25 that you can see. The next is to increase the frequency of their purchases, meaning have patients come back frequently. So in my practice, they come back frequently. Let's say I set up 4 sessions of Swift, or I set up 6 sessions of Shockwave, or you're always seeing patients, all new patients get seen back at least once. So increasing the number of visits, increasing the number of patients, and then increasing the per visit value. So the value of the patients, you want them to go up, and then the lower value patients, either you don't want to see back, or you could have someone else see back. Unfortunately, when you're a new doctor, a lot of times the ones that the more established doctors don't want to see, they're going to be sending them to you. So you need to make those either some way make them more profitable or see them less frequently. So kind of one example to this is what I used to do matrixectomies. When I didn't have enough patients, I would have them come back at 2 weeks and 4 weeks. But now that I have a full schedule, I'll only see them back in 3 weeks, or sometimes I don't even need to see them back. Why? Because that 3-week visit is less valuable, less profitable, and I can give them other patient education information that'll kind of prepare them to what they're going to expect. I go over a little bit more in detail. I send them resources about that to reduce that. Same thing with paronychias. I used to always see paronychias back in 2 weeks when I didn't have a full schedule. But then as my schedule got full, I would reduce the number of paronychia follow-up appointments after I did an IND for those patients. So you have to figure out kind of how you're going to do that. So each of these has a different leverage points. So increasing the number of patients, I feel initially when you're starting, has the most leverage because you just need patients. And then after that, developing procedures that have more frequency of seeing them back, and that would be, like I talked about, these regenerative treatments. And then per visit value, once you're full, then you can really optimize and increase the per visits of these things. So once you max out your patients or have a full schedule, then all the leverage comes from increasing the per visit value. So either increasing the per visit value or reducing those things that are low visit, or making them kind of combining them together, or getting another person that can help see patients. So for a new practitioner, usually you're not full from day one unless you work for a really big system that feeds you. Now, the problem with being fed by a really big system and being overly busy, let's say 25 to 30 patients, a lot of times you're just in a treadmill of seeing patients, and you're making all your revenue from volume. So volume would be x-rays, and then office visits, x-rays, office visits, maybe cortisone injections, maybe small little procedures. So you're doing tons of patients, tons of volume, but your per visit value really isn't there. And a lot of times the comprehensiveness of your treatment isn't there because you're not thinking about a lot of DME, like walking boots or ankle braces or AFOs or things like that, or doing wound care products in the office. So things like that can really boost your productivity, you're not thinking about because you're just on this treadmill. But that's the way some of these bigger groups do things. Okay, so one final point is what about the RVU system? So some doctors work in these big systems. For that, use RVUs. If you use an RVU system, you're going to be paid based on your RVU number. So you need to figure out what are the highest paying RVU things. And then also the challenge with some of these bigger systems that use RVUs, you don't have these additional modalities that are revenue producing, like Swift or ultrasound or shockwave. Or amnio injections or PRP or things like that. And also you might not get anything based on x-rays. So you don't have your own x-rays. You're like doing x-rays through this system that you're doing. So you have to kind of figure out that. Okay. So the next article I'm going to talk about here in the series is how to increase the number of patients. So since patients is the biggest bottleneck initially when you're starting out, you're seeing 5 or 10 patients. We're going to talk about that next.